Hi there guys, well on this week's video we have got news about cheap iPhones, about MacBook Airs, and also of course the brand new Mac Studio and Mac Display, so let's get into this week's video. Welcome back, I hope you've had a great week, and of course it's been a very busy week as well in the world of Apple news. The order units started landing yesterday as of recording this interview of the new Mac Studio and the Studio Display as well. Kind of mixed reactions from what I'm seeing so far. I've got some more videos to go and watch. I don't have one myself, but obviously I've watched all of the unboxings and reviewings from some of the big content creators out there. And on the Studio Display, certainly there have been some issues all to do with the webcam. Now, in the Studio Display, of course, we know that it's running the 813 Bionic chip in there. And part of the reason we're doing that is that it is running the brand new webcam, the webcam that's been taken from the iPad Pro, which means you've got center stage and you also got a set of 6 speakers in there and 3 microphones as well, running noise cancelling. So that's why it's using a chip. But with regard to the webcam, which is the 12 megapixel ultra-wide f2.4 aperture device, as I say, you find in the current range of iPad Pros. People were saying that it was poor. I mean, to quote The Verge, and it was actually from a correspondent called Nilal Patel in The Verge. He wrote, "The camera looks awful in good light and downright miserable in low light." So there you go. It looks like they've got a few issues. Apple have been straight onto it and they've said that there's going to be a software update released, but they haven't said when yet. But it seems that Apple are aware of it. But have you got yourself a Studio Display, and what do you think of it? I'm going to be getting one for sure. I, like many of us, have been waiting for a 27-inch display to go along with the Macs, so I'm going to get my order for those in soon. But let me know what you think. I heard a couple of people were saying there were some blemishes on the aluminium casing as well, not dings or nicks or anything, just like blemishes in the metal. But let me know, have you got one? Have you been happy with it? And what is the display like? Is it just the same as the 27-inch iMac? Let me know, and you can do that on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you at @DTalkingTech. So the way of buying your iPhone has changed, certainly for people over in the States. If your carrier was AT&T or T-Mobile over in the States and you're buying a phone directly from Apple's website or from one of their stores, up until recently, you had to give your social security number and, as I know the Americans say, cell number. We call it mobile, same thing. And those had to be given just to make sure that you had sufficient funds, that the money could be taken each month. Obviously, that's how you're buying your device, with the support of the carrier company. Well, that has now changed, and Apple is saying that they want to speed things along. So what happens now is you can pick up your phone and the consumer themselves, you as the customer, will be putting in that data on your phone at the point of setup. So the idea being you can do it from the comfort of your home, and also it's more secure. But it's interesting, it's starting in the States. I reckon it's not long till it comes over to the UK as well, and maybe worldwide. Something you're interested in? Anything that speeds things up, it's got to be good, right? So before we get onto the more serious and interesting subjects of Apple views this week, I just wanted to know about, well, it's a little poll if you like. Let me know in the comments below in this video. Are you part of the team pill and hole on the new iPhone 14? Or do you just like the regular notch that we already have? Now, I don't know if I'm alone on this. I think I've said it before. Notches never made a big thing to me until I started making YouTube videos, and I found out notch is a massive issue. But we know it's coming, and we know that the pill and punch, or the pill and hole, is going to be part of the premium range of iPhone 14s. The 14 Pro and Pro Max are going to have that layout, whilst the other 2 iPhone 14s will have the notch, as we've already got it. I'll put some images on this video, but let me know in the comments which you prefer. And now on to display news, but not directly to do with the Studio Display. Looking at a tweet that I saw this week from Ming-Chi, he was saying that Apple are still very concerned about the escalating costs of mini LEDs. So any products that require a new display of that different size are going to be affected, because they're not going to put the R&D into making them just at the moment. That would affect plans to put a mini LED onto the 11-inch iPad Pro, and also, of course, if they were looking about making a mini LED version of the Studio Display that was launched this week. Kuo tends to get his details pretty spot on most of the time, but I did notice that Ross Young disagrees and says that Apple are still planning on making a mini LED later this year for the Studio Display. Now, those two are normally singing from the same song sheet and get their details right. Be interesting to see which way this plays, though, doesn't it? But one thing I must say I'm looking forward to, if I get myself a MacBook Pro soon, that I'm very much hoping I will, that I'm looking forward to that mini LED in there. And speaking of Kuo Ming-Chi, there's more news for him now. So a couple of other very interesting tweets during the week. Do you think I spend too much time on Twitter, possibly? Yes, during the week I saw that he said that once again, the on-off debate about Apple Car has once again run into problems. This time it's to do with scaling up to mass production, so still no news. I think they were talking about Apple Car coming out in 2025. I can't see that happening, and surely there's way too much still to do on that project, I would have thought. And as we know, it's had its stumbling blocks over the years. This is just the latest of them. And also, Kuo is saying that there is trouble afoot for the mobile phone industry as a whole. Apparently, it's struggling with costs and being able to get parts on time. Chips, I assume, are part of that issue. But Kuo thinks there are stormy waters ahead for all mobile phone suppliers. And whilst talking of Twitter, I'm always talking about Twitter, it's a brilliant place to find some news on. And Mark Gurman, of course, another very, very reliable source on Twitter, has said this week that the plans to have a 15-inch MacBook Air seem to have been shelved. No, Apple are no longer thinking that. We've got more MacBook Air news coming later on in the video, but if you were thinking of holding on for a 15-inch MacBook Air, I would suggest that's not the thing to be doing. Apparently, Apple have dropped plans for that, but Gurman is saying that there's going to be another iteration of the iOS, and it'll be 15.5 this time, and that's going to be released in time for WWDC in June. Talking of the new operating system, have you put the 15.4 iOS on your devices and also updated in Macs? If you have, it means you'll be running and using universal control. And isn't it the coolest thing? I did it the other day. They said it works straight out of the tin. It doesn't. You need to go into display preferences, or at least I did. But it's just an amazing thing just to be able to drag a mouse straight from an iPad to a Mac and then start using your keyboard as well. It's awesome. Really, really clever stuff. And I'm having so much fun using it. The only thing I haven't really looked into yet is the new emojis. I know there's a melting heart emoji, a melting face emoji, sorry. And there's also, I believe, a pregnant man, whatever. And of course, there's a new voice in Siri as well, isn't there? Which is an American voice representing the LGBTQ community. So lots going on in iOS under the new release, the 15.4. If you've got it on your devices and you've tried it out, let me know what you're making of it. And if you've been having any kind of issues with your second-gen AirPods, the good news is if you go into preferred suppliers, or of course directly into Apple stores themselves, the guys in there at the bar now have a firmware updater tool. So if you've been experiencing any kind of user issues, you can take those along. You can't do firmware updates yourself. They can only be done by recognised technicians in store, but at least it means if you've been having any kind of issues, such as not picking up on Bluetooth, not picking up on devices, that could be a firmware issue, pop along to your local Apple store. I believe the service is free. Take your AirPods along in the case, and the guys there will do it for you. And not only that, it's not only the second gen, but also I believe that the AirPod Max are on the list as well, so you can get firmware updates for those. But not interesting enough, the third gen AirPods, they are still waiting to get the firmware updater tool in store. But if you've been experiencing any issues, you know what to do now. Pop along to the store, and the guys there in the blue t-shirts will sort it out for you. So, do you fancy getting yourself a cheap iPhone 12 direct from Apple? Well, if you do, I've got news for you. For the first time ever this week, Apple have got iPhone 12s on their refurbished site. Now, the refurbished site used to be this well-kept secret. Somebody told about it years and years ago. Too many people know about it now for my liking. But if you go down to the bottom of the homepage on Apple, I'm sure you know where it is. The refurbished site is there. And it's as if you're buying new from Apple, any products they have back. And I'm sure they're going to be getting a lot of review units on the Mac Studio back from the YouTube boys soon, over the next couple of weeks. Those will eventually end up on the refurbished site. They've got all the warranties. It's exactly like buying new from Apple. Well, as I say, for the first time ever this week, you can buy iPhone 12s from the site. And I was having a little look. I saw a 64 gig 12 mini on sale there with a £90 saving on it. And there was a silver 256 gig iPhone 12 Pro Max, and that had a massive saving of £160 on it. So go and take a look at the refurbished site. That was the UK site as well I was looking at, so they're definitely available over here. If you want yourself an iPhone 12 at a bargain price with all of Apple's warranties, you know where to go looking. So smartphone technology is playing its part over in the ongoing war in Ukraine. When people come out from bunkers and hiding when there's been bombings, they're getting the smartphones out and uploading videos, real raw, unfettered videos of what the devastation is truly like over there. And they're uploading those for people and news outlets to pick up on. Now, some have been surprised that Russia haven't tried to take out communication networks. But of course, if you think about it, by leaving the communication networks open, it means that Russia can see what stories are being put out. Either which way, I know you'll join with me in sending all of our love and best wishes over to the people of Ukraine. But it's interesting to know that even then, smartphone technology is playing its small little part. And on to the MacBook Air news that I spoke about that we had. Well, the good news is if you want yourself a new MacBook Air, okay, not a 15-inch, but a new MacBook Air, the new design and style should be out later in the year. We imagine it's going to come out in an autumn event ready for students to go back to school, university and college with. And also pretty certain it's going to take its design cues and styles from the current range of MacBook Pro. So it's going to be squarer. The tapered design that's been part of the MacBook Air for all of its existence will go. It's going to go for a squarer, unibodied look. And for the first time ever, there are going to be colours available on MacBook Airs. And as I said, we expect those to be out round about the autumn of this year. So will they, won't they? What am I talking about? A large 27-inch iMac. There's definitely two sides to this argument, and I don't know which way it's going to play. Mac Rumours reported this week that they've spoken to somebody that's very close to the Apple pipeline, and Apple have said absolutely not. There are no plans in the foreseeable future to be making a large 27-inch iMac. Now, something I wrote about this week was that if the iMac were to come back at any point in the future, almost certainly it won't be a pro-level machine. It doesn't have any point in the lineup now with the new Mac Studio and Studio Display. You can pretty much get yourself an iMac for that same kind of money. Now, if the iMac were to come back in a larger format, I think it would always be a consumer device with the basic M1, M2 chip, whatever it is we're running at that point, but not with the M1 Pro, Max and Ultra chips in it. Just doesn't seem any point to it anymore. So Mac Rumours are adamant that it won't be coming back, but Ross Young, the screen analyst, who has now dropped on Apple Track, he's no longer 100% accurate. I think he's down to about 92% because he made a slight mistake on the display news recently. He is still saying that he thinks there will be a large screen iMac coming back sometime later this year. So, as ever, time will tell. What's your money on? Let me know in the comments below. And also, are you missing not being able to go out and buy a 27-inch iMac? They are beautiful machines and I've got so much time for them. But I guess everything has its moment, right? So very briefly, just back to the Mac Studio. First of all, if you have bought one this week, let me know in the comments how you're finding it. I'd love to know in the real world, particularly if you export video, render video, I'd love to know how you're finding it. But if you've just bought yourself a Mac Studio and you're wondering how to keep it safe on your desk, well, it looks like Apple are going to be releasing something very soon. A third-party lock or lock adapter is the idea they've got. They did one, I believe, years ago with the trash can Mac. And because these can often be on open plan offices and desks in offices, they've decided, and it's not a bad idea actually, of finding some way to be able to secure the Mac. Now, something that I saw online this week with the first review units was them saying that there's virtually no access to the machine at all. And even at the bottom, the vents are very closed off. So I don't know how Apple are going to develop this idea, but they're working with a third-party company at the moment, and it would be a great idea because they're not cheap and you want to keep them on your desk and not in somebody else's rucksack. Just a couple more stories on this week's Apple Views, and the first of those is passwords. I know we all hate them. They're a thing of our life, we know that, and most of us are using some sort of password keeper. I use Keychain, it works just fine for me. Well, passwords could soon be a thing of the past. Apple are working on something called passkeys in iCloud Keychain. The idea being it's going to work very, very similarly to the way that your Apple Watch can unlock your Mac at the moment. So if you're within proximity of it, the Apple Watch will unlock the Mac. Well, it looks like that's the way they're going to go with websites. So all you'll have to do is type your username into a website, and then if you've got a second Apple device in proximity, it will send an authentication certificate to that device, and in turn, that will unlock the website you're trying to get into. Anything that makes our life easier and means we don't have to use passwords as much has got to be a good thing. But technology like that is just fantastic, isn't it? And it looks like it could very soon be coming our way. And how about this? Do you know that all of the products that came out at peak performance only last week, that being the iPhone 13 in green, the brand new iPad Air with the M1 chip in it, the Mac Studio and the Studio Display, all of those items are now available for click and collect. Again, only in the States at the moment. I think it's rolling out to other countries around the world very soon. And it means that you can click and on the same day go and pick them up in store. Now, of course, there are certain restrictions. The iPad and the iPhone, there are a load of different kind of configurations you can order for those. But if you're looking to get the Apple Studio Display, for instance, then you can only order that with the basic, straightforward standard glass on it and just the tilt stand. And if you're looking to get one of the Mac Studios, again, it's the base model. So it'd be the 1999 model or the 3999 model. So either the M1 or the Ultra models, but not all the spec'd up variations. And sure, you can understand why they've got to keep these items on the shelf in store. But at least now, if you want to click and collect on the same day, you can do it with all of the products that were released last week at peak performance. And finally, guys, a little bit of news to do with, well, sort of to do with, no, very much to do actually with the Studio Display. I was doing some delving around, and do you know that the Studio Display, apart from having the 13 bionic chip inside of it, is also running the full-blown version of iOS 15.4, the latest version. It's running it. No one's talking about it. I don't know what their plans are, but it's clear that Apple have got some plans. Why else would they put the iOS 15.4 inside it? But watch this space. I think things are coming with that display. And that, my friends, is all I've got time for this week and all the news I've got for you on this week's Apple Views. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget, if you have, to like, comment and subscribe. Make sure to share the videos out. Let's help the channel grow. And I'll be back with more news for you at the same time next week. Have yourselves a great week.